It is my pleasure to welcome Richard Barone.
I guess I was obsessed always with pop music, since I first heard it, which of course I can't remember. And by the time I was 7, I had my own radio show in Tampa, Florida, on the beach, a beach party. That I get to play those records that I loved. They actually let me pick the songs, and I play them on maybe I think it's 2-hour radio slot every Sunday from the municipal beach of Tampa, Florida. It fueled the fire more for me. I got more and more obsessed with the bands and the sounds and the producers and the art direction and pretty much all the aspects of making records. As I got older, I started producing and recording my own music and other people, including by the time I was 16, I brought Tiny Tim into the studio. I made an album with Tiny Tim. And I had my own band too. There was a punk group called Snails, and we made a record as well. So I was just obsessed with making it, listening to it, everything about pop music before I was even 7 years old. So I think it's in my blood, basically. I guess I felt Tampa getting smaller and smaller for me. I wanted to be in a media center of some sort, and Tampa was not it. It was Tiny Tim first who suggested Greenwich Village and living in New York. It was very soon after that I saw an ad in the Village Voice that was placed by a guy named Glenn Morrow, looking for a guitar player for a band he was forming. And in the band were all the members of the future Bongos.
Rob Norris and Frank Giannini and myself were trying to find a fourth member to fill out a band, and we'd been through an incredible amount of just terrible musicians that just didn't really understand what we were trying to do. We met Richard, and not only did he sort of understand like the Velvet Underground, he played us a recording he made of something off of White Light, White Heat. I don't even know if we played it the first day, other than maybe we just listened to some music, but we just realized he was on the same page with us.
I remember going over there to meet him that first night, and as soon as I laid eyes on him, I knew something was going to happen. I recognized a brother, maybe past lives. I said, I know this guy, and he's got drive, and something's going to happen. Just knew it.
Once we started playing with him, it was as if, this is it. This is so perfect. He really knew, he had just a great sense of coming up with parts that had real economy and were melodic and just fit perfectly. And he was, as everyone who knows Richard, he was a lot of fun to be around. And we were off and running for a while as a band called A.
But the A band didn't last very long, but a lot of friendships were forged from that group. And the band was quite good. It was inventive and had some great sounds. I just played guitar. I was not the front man. When A disintegrated, we formed the Bongos soon after as a trio.
As Richard has confessed in his book, he sort of snatched the band, or when I wasn't looking or something.
What was cool was to be able to create away from home the Bongos, because even though we'd started here, we went to England pretty soon, and we kind of really created the sound of the band and the look of the band more in England, I think. When Fetish Records, which is the label we were signed to in England, started putting the singles out in America, we immediately started getting good reviews. It was a lot of fun. We were, a lot younger, and it was really cool to have this immediate feedback from the media.
I got to play the Bongos the very first 45, on the turntable, on the radio on WAW back in 1980.
I mean, the first single just, Vince Gelsa played it a couple times in a row, and we just went on this wild ride.
We had some great, radio friends and media friends, and Matt Pinfield was an early one.
I got introduced to the Bongos, actually, and Richard Barone when I was doing radio at Rutgers University in New Brunswick, New Jersey, WRSU.
We heard he was playing our records on the radio. When we made our first album, when Drums on the Hudson first came out in America, we suggested that we do, with the album, an interview recording that could be sent to radio stations around the country, because we couldn't be everywhere at once.
And, all college radio DJs listen to other college radio stations. We all want to hear what each other were doing. So I was listening to WNYU in New York City, which in the afternoons used to play punk, post-punk, new wave, no wave, whatever you want to call it. And all of a sudden I hear this song come through, and it was the Bulrushes, one of my favorite songs that Richard's ever written. But it just exploded through the radio. I just thought, I asked myself, what the fuck is this? This song is so fucking cool. Just the feel of it, it just had these the chords were beautiful, but it just had this kind of real crazy melancholy, but it was powerful.
But his first interview, I believe, was with the Bongos, which was really cool for us.
But I was honored to be asked. It was the first thing I'd ever done that was ever recorded and sent out on cassette to radio stations around the country.
Okay, I'm Matt Pinfield, and I'm here with Richard and Rob of the Bongos, who've just released their first album, Drums Along the Hudson.
The whole idea of pop music is meant to be short, capsulized. We think poetry almost, and that's how our songs are. That's how they're formulated.
And within the band, we share all the members share a similar sense of symmetry and proportion, and that just happens to be how our songs come out.
That came through PVC, which was an indie label distributed by Gem, which at the time was one of the biggest, if not the sole importer of music from overseas, and they had their own in-house label. And I guess that was one of the places where the Bongos got their earliest commercial success before signing in, I guess, 83 to RCA.
They wanted to do a mini album. I think mainly because they wouldn't know how to market a do-it-yourself band from Hoboken, New Jersey. So instead of doing a full album first, they wanted to test the waters with a mini album. They called it an EP, but they called it a mini album. That's what it said on the top. And it was Numbers with Wings. It's a song I had written in England when we were mixing Drums on the Hudson. A lot of it was due to the video that we made. That was nominated for Best Direction at the first MTV Music Awards. When we first signed with RCA, we had a team of players working with us who had signed us and understood, had come to our rehearsals for months, knew who we were, understood all those idiosyncrasies that we're talking about how we formed and how do-it-yourself we were. But like with any corporation, after a short period of time, all those people were gone and there was a whole new batch who had no idea. And those people had their suggestions for us that were not really necessarily on the money.
They were the antithesis of that. If anything, they were serious musicians, serious about their music, serious about their craft. And, things that take longer and are serious last longer.
We felt a little bit at odds with the label. It was a minor feeling. It wasn't major, and we kept rolling along. But I didn't feel that we had someone there who understood us anymore.
So it was really unfortunate because they were mostly an independent type of band, unfortunately signed to a major label who was great in other areas of the music industry, not progressive rock.
When the Bongos came apart, I like to describe it as the path of a great civilization. It had its roots and its exciting origins, and it reached its golden age. And then it kind of got, I think it was like rare, medium, and well done, and it was just like a civilization in decline, and we all were looking to grow in different ways.
It felt like the end of a chapter to me, mentally. It felt like, okay, we did that, we did that, we did that. It's like, it just felt like it was time for a change. That's when I slowly started putting together an acoustic group with acoustic guitar and cello and myself on electric guitar. And that's when I called Nick Celeste, because I had been producing his group called In Color, a really good pop group.
One day after I don't know if it was after a bongo show or something at Maxwell's, he just turned to me and he said, I'm going to be doing this side thing, and do you want to be a part of it?
He sang great, and I thought that voice and my voice could be nice, and then he could play acoustic, I'll play electric. And I had known Jane Scarpantoni, the cellist, from playing in a group called Tiny Lights and also at Maxwell's.
And we had cello and violin in our band. And so, and we played at Maxwell's, which was the big place there. And I think he heard that, and he was thinking, about cello perhaps in his head. At the same time, it lends itself to this kind of situation with the percussion and the guitars and the singing and everything like that.
On some of my favorite T.Rex albums, it sounded like Tony Visconti was doubling the bass with the cello. Now, I'm not sure if he was doing that, because I think actually he was bowing an electric bass. He had an an Ampeg electric bass that was a stand-up electric bass. So I think he was actually doing it with himself with a bow on a bass. But I always, in my head, thought of it as a cello, doubling the bass. And I kind of couldn't wait to have a cello in the group. What this band let me do was to try other kinds of music that I liked besides the usual pop rock. I mean, I love pop, but not just pop rock.
Well, Richard was always a very creative person, and he wasn't just locked in to one particular sound.
And he suggested that I do use vibes in it, and maybe marimba. And, why not, have these other sort of unique percussion, basically, this type of mallet percussion. It was his suggestion. He called Mike Stoller of Lieber and Stoller for the recommendation of a percussionist. And the recommendation that came in was Valerie Naranjo.
I didn't really know his previous material, and I didn't really know the scene. I'm a classically trained musician who found myself in West Africa because I noticed that there's a certain kind of spirit, a certain kind of virtuosity there, but a certain kind of spirit and soul that accompanies that, and it attracted me. So I was kind of putting those two worlds together at the time when I met Richard.
I feel it has the vibe of a 50s jazz trio vocal album, which is what I wanted to do. And I could never do with a normal drum kit, a rock kit, electric bass, electric guitars. I couldn't do it like that. It had to be done in this kind of way, which is, I guess, kind of stripped down.
I thought it was great. I mean, I certainly wouldn't have wanted to try to recreate the Bongos, do something. I think it was smart. I think it was very smart to kind of do it, go in a totally different direction.
To hear a rocker like himself, and I consider him a rocker, working with instruments like timpani and cello and acoustic instruments, I just found it to be delightful, and I felt very comfortable working, and still do feel so comfortable working with him.
I think there was only one rehearsal in Richard's tiny West Village apartment, and it was from the beginning you knew this was going to work. This was going to be great. And the fact that she could play not just the percussive percussion instruments, but vibes and keyboards and marimba gave the album a spaciness, a floating quality that I think really helped fill in what would be just completely empty space.
I had a strange dream before this album was made, and I've never had anything quite like it. And it was Mark Bolan. I'd never dreamed about him before. I'm not really obsessed with dreams, but this was a very specific one. And Mark Bolan spoke to me in his voice that I had heard, on radio broadcasts and stuff, and I kind of knew how he talked. And he asked me if I was making a real album or just a collection of songs. That was all I remember from that dream, but I thought, how interesting. And I woke up and I was thinking, am I making just a collection of songs, or is it an album? And what's interesting about the songs now, when I sing them now, the meaning, it's so different. Because I hadn't really experienced half the stuff I was singing about at that point.
Love is a wind that screams. She says love is a wind that screams.
I never really thought of it as a commercial venture when we started doing these shows. To me, it was just a way to go out and play, because I wanted to play music. And I wanted to kind of not feel the kind of pressure the Bongos were under. Only thing that changed really was when Vince Scelsa started doing a series of shows at a club here called The Bottom Line.
My memory is that Richard and the Cool Blue Halo was the first show that we did in that series.
And a couple of days before the show, it just occurred to me that we could make a live album, because it sounded really good when we rehearsed. So I called Marty Scott, which, I've done before, but never to make an album. It's always been he's coming to me to make an album. And this was, I want to make an album, Marty. And called him up, and I said, we're going to play Vince Scelsa's show at the Bottom Line this Sunday. Why don't we record it? And I held my breath. And he said yes. I was shocked.
This is what he wanted to do. You think I would have come up with this kind of idea, to do a record with no drums, no bass, no keyboards, okay, and a live record? I mean, who would have wanted to do something like that? Only Richard.
It was just a lot of stuff going on, and I was sort of terrified. At that point, when I saw all the production that was going into it, I didn't think we could pull it off. I honestly didn't think we were going to pull it off.
But even though it's like taking a chance that the recording at the bottom line would most probably be terrific.
And to do it live was even tougher to do. You get one shot. You get one shot one night. Okay, the ambiance of the audience has got to be perfect. The sound's got to be perfect. No overdubs. It had to be absolutely perfect, and it was.
But the nervousness came from really not knowing what was going to happen. So it was both nervousness and sort of a thrill.
He just put it all together in a really compelling, immediate way. And that, I think, is the key about Richard, is that, you know, he really knows how to work in the moment. He's very engaged in the moment. He gets it right. You know, he nails, he's on pitch. He can deliver, you know, the goods.
Richard was so unique, and he had a vision of what he wanted to do, and he wanted to do it live. And with the instrumentation, Cool Blue Halo, it was something that no one had really tried to do, let alone pulled off.
Because it was so singularly terrific, I said, you have to go with that. You know, you went with your gut to do it. And like all really great artists, there is always that slight insecurity, which I think makes artists great, because they want to do better. But he soon got over that, and the reception was immediately terrific.
The show was a thrill. I mean, it was great to have a lot of friends there, but I mean, it was great to have just all the strangers there, you know, who we were playing this music for, that maybe knew the bongos, but really had no idea what I was going to do. But then I got an advance copy of it from the label, and I listened to it, and I went into a complete panic. I thought it was going to completely bomb. And I mean, I don't mean just commercially, I mean critically bomb. When just the opposite happened, I was pleasantly surprised when the press started coming in, the first reviews, and the radio support.
It was very beautiful music. I thought it was very soulful. And it was really a direct response, I think, to Richard's fascination with a certain kind of English rock and roll. You know, there's the spirit of David Bowie and Mark Bolan that kind of hover over all the material on Cool Blue Halo. Even the Beatles with Cry Baby Cry. You know, it's very much Richard's tribute to that music that he fell in love with back when he was a teenager.
The critics, when they heard it, I think that's what got him over the top. Because when all the critics said, this is amazing, no one's done this before, it's very unique, it's something, the songs sound great, I think that's what got his confidence back.
You know, in certain ways it's a critic's record. You know, it's a wonderful record to write about. You know, there's so much to say. You know, the music itself leaves so many things open-ended and unfinished in a way. And I mean that in a really positive sense. You know, you're not getting, you know, statements. You're getting kind of poetic environments that you can drift in and wander in. And that kind of stuff is fun to write about. I mean, if you go back, you know, and look at some of the writing that was done at the time, it seems to bring out good writing in people, I think.
When we toured with Cool Blue Halo, we went all around the country and we played Seattle, you know, and we played this hip club that you're supposed to play in Seattle, and we did Man Who Sold the World. You know, and then a couple years later, Nirvana's doing it exactly like we did it with a cello.
Certainly, you'd have to think that that Kurt heard that version, and it was least influenced by it, if not, you know, copying it note for note.
I really liked it, and I liked it more when I knew other people liked it. Because, you know, when you make music, anyone who makes music, you know, you make it for yourself, yes, maybe first you make it for yourself, but you do want people to like it, really. And I know that some musicians may say they don't, but I really want people to like it, and I think most do.
Richard's guitar playing is really extraordinary. Again, not something that people comment on a lot, but he's quite a brilliant guitar player. And in this context, you know, beautifully lyrical.
In the early 80s, I'd seen a film with Marlon Brando called The Fugitive Kind. It's with Anna Magnani, and it was from a play written by Tennessee Williams. And he plays in that film a character called Snakeskin, and he's a guy with a guitar. The particular pose to me is my variation of the Snakeskin character. And it was a simple shot. I had seen the photographs. Vince Morrow also had, I think, noted that photographer from Men's Vogue. He was Italian Vogue, L'Uomo Vogue, and thought he was he loved the textures this guy was getting in his black and white photography. So we picked him. His name is William Duke.
So Charles Lane is where we did the album cover for Cool Blue Halo, but also I used to rehearse on the street at Charles Lane Rehearsal Studios. That's how we found the location. Now there are some architectural marvels that have been added that were not here in 1987. I think this little strangely louvered, security paneled building was once the brick-fronted set for the Cool Blue Halo cover. I think I sat right about here. You know, I did something like that. You know, because we were trying to make a record that was not of the 80s, really. We were trying to make music that didn't have an era or a time. So we looked for a location that had that same feeling. And in a moment of laziness, I sort of sat like
Cool Blue Halo, as amazing as it is a record that is an uphill battle in any situation, and certainly in 1987 it would be difficult. It was not the kind of thing that typically made it on radio. Live music in general would be hard to make it on most radio stations.
You know, they weren't able to, I think, put the support behind the record that it could have been, you know, that it could have had. But again, this was an album that, you know, was certainly not in step with what was going on.
And on top of that, a record label that is has financial instability, and you basically do have a recipe for the record just being buried.
And we were the smallest, you know, public company in the record business, and we were being bought by another record entity, and they were being funded by one of the majors at the time, and their funding fell apart, and they tried to pull out of the deal, which sent everything into disarray.
So it was interesting, last year at a South by Southwest music festival in Austin, Jay Frank introduced himself to me backstage, and he told me he was starting a record label and was interested in doing something with Cool Blue Halo, and asked me if I was. And he reminded me that it was the 25th anniversary. I really hadn't thought of it. I mean, it's not something I don't really mark each anniversary of my albums. I mean, I kind of move sort of in that forward direction still, and I don't really even, I didn't remember it.
The idea for doing a 25th anniversary project for Cool Blue Halo came about simply because of a passion that I had for the record. Everybody who's in the music business grows up with an album that had a heavy influence on their life. Cool Blue Halo happened to be one of those albums for me. And we just started talking just about how influential the album is and how important it was. And I suggested to him that we get together and collaborate and make a real special project of it.
Of course I agreed.
We hope that it's going to be experienced widely, but honestly, it's more about recognizing that this is a body of work that deserves its artistic due in how important it was for those that heard it.
When we first were planning this concert, for some reason I thought it'll just be Cool Blue Halo. But then I realized, you know, there's so much more we could do.
I think that we wanted to opt to do something different by really making it a special, big project that encompassed the original as well as the new.
We added songs that were later and some that were even before. Like we opened the show with one of the songs that the Bongos did in Compass Point in the Bahamas that I've never performed anywhere, and it's never been released. It's called My Wildest Dreams. That's the first song on the show. Then I kind of brought on one musician at a time. Jane comes on and we did Before You Were Born. Then Nick comes on and joins us and we do To the Pure, which were both of those songs are from the Primal Dream album after Cool Blue Halo, you know. And then at that point we go into the entire Cool Blue Halo album. I tried to pick songs that kept the feel of Cool Blue Halo, but took it to the next sort of step. I wanted to bring in one more cover song that was in the spirit of how we picked the songs from Cool Blue Halo, which were obscure songs by very, very famous artists. And the song that came to mind was Child of the Moon by the Rolling Stones, and I was thrilled to do it. And I think it sounds really cool. And that's with everybody on stage. And Richard Karras, my drummer, who I work with a lot, comes on stage with us at that point. Candy John Carr, my favorite bongo player, who I met working with Donovan, who played on all of Donovan's great records, plays bongo drums. On that song, Denny Bonet, violin player, joins us.
He did that 25 years ago, and this is what he's doing now. So it sort of comes full circle, and to see how it all comes from the beginning to where it is now, I think it's very cool. And I'm just happy to be a part of it.
So working with Richard is very, well, as a personal experience, very easy. He leaves a lot of room for a musician to kind of be creative. So he works with musicians. As a leader, he works with musicians, which is, somewhat different and very, creatively speaking, good for the players he has with him.
I love that. I love the record, and when he said he's getting back together and doing all this stuff, it's like, oh, I've got to be there to watch it and stuff. And he said, well, we're going to do a few songs afterwards. I want you to play as well. And he lives for spontaneity, and that's something that's, both nerve-wracking and challenging and incredibly rewarding when you do it. But he also lets it free flow, and that's what I think makes it sound so special.
But, also in this show is Garth Hudson, who I worked with first also with Donovan, and he's an amazing player, of course, from the band, but just doesn't matter where he's from, he's the most amazing player, who plays accordion on this album and piano on Glow, which is a song from my most recent album, produced by Tony Visconti, who is our other guest on this, and who plays beautifully on The Man Who Sold the World, which he originally produced.
I was impressed because he engineers the whole thing, the show. I thought the show at Carnegie Hall should go on the road. Do you mind if I call it city rock at its finest? And the orchestration is interesting too, at least space. With Jane there, I get prompting all the time from the cello.
That having Rob back with me on this show too was really cool. So it was like the Cool Blue Hill Band with Rob. That did not happen then. That was nice to make it happen now.
Whenever Richard and I play together, we both have this thing that we talk about when we look at each other and we both know that we're doing exactly what we're here to do, and we're doing it right, and we're doing it together, and we're helping each other, and it's just a real brotherhood kind of thing.
We talked about what went into the recording of the original album, and this was not something that a lot of thought was given to. And so there was a lot of elements in the recording of the record that had one really did a lot of production and planning on it, they probably wouldn't have done. The way that the crowd was recorded, the number of takes that were given, how they placed the mics up to the band. There's a lot of things that, while it really gives the album a very special warmth, on the other hand, the album does have its technical flaws.
Bringing to life a record that was mixed and mastered in the mid 80s, late 80s, now it's a great piece of history. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to see if this tape needs to be baked. The first time we're going to try playing this tape, and we'll see what happens. This tape has to be baked. Okay?
That's cool.
We've just proven, and the problem is that what's happening is that the oxide is collecting on the head now, and it's breaking it. So we don't want to play this tape anymore. And what we do now is we have a convection oven at 130 degrees, 140 degrees. We put them in there for about 2 hours, and it will play like it's 1987.
But you heard the sound is good.
Yeah, it sounded beautiful coming off, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
It sounded really good. And to be able to bring it to life again in a way that people are going to hear it again, and with everybody listening the way we do off of, iPods and iPads and whatever, and kind of taking that into account, I think people are really going to discover some nice stuff on this record. That it shows another side of Richard. We all think of him as a bongo and kind of beginning of punk and grunge rock, but the more acoustic stuff that's on this record is very interesting and another nice side of him. So I think that bringing that out these days will be, it'll be nice to see what response we get from them out there.
You know, but going on stage this time to do this concert as opposed to the original one in 1987 was a very different feeling. The fear factor was not there really at all. So this time, you know, looking out in the audience and seeing Vince Gelsa, Mick Rock photographing the show like in the pit, and then Jonas Mikas, one of my mentors, who is just an amazing artist in his own right as well, you know, so filming the show, you know, it just made me feel the opposite of being afraid in a way. It was just a joyful kind of feeling, a lot of fun. Everybody was having a good time. There was an incredible vibe in the room.
Well, he's a lot of fun for starters. Other than being a genuinely, authentically sweet guy, and someone, for a singer, he has quite a selfless attitude. You know, it's unusual. Most singers are, God bless them, you know, fairly pumped up on their no, self-importance isn't the right phrase, but on all the attention they get, you know. Richard has a modest demeanor, but he sure kicks it in when he hits the stage.
You know, it's a record that is very subtle in its appeal. Not that, I mean, if you get it wholeheartedly.
His concept is very beautiful, very sensitive.
He's a storyteller with great vocal chops, great musicianship, and a spectacular writing ability.
I move in this music a lot, and so to actually see it performed in front of me, I mean, it's thrilling. I'm just so happy that it's going to take place, and I know it's going to be great.
It was great. It's like in those villages that Lomax or Harry Smith recorded, like everybody having good time. It was like what's great about Richard is that he always has good time, great time with all these performers. And if he has time, then I had good time.
I think Richard always is moving in new directions and different directions, and it's always great. You know, he's just got it.
I mean, Richard's a unique talent. He's maybe deserving of a little more recognition than he's had so far. He is very, very respected.
He's written some of my favorite songs, a lot of things that I love, that have a very special place in my heart. So, you know, I'm always excited when he comes out with new music, and I've always got an open ear, and I always find something in there to connect to. So, 25 years, it went quickly.
You feel there is something like he puts his heart, his life into it, and everybody around him, and that's what he did. And that's great, and that's what matters, the heart.
There wasn't the fear of, will it fly? I knew that something would happen. I knew that maybe that's one thing I've gotten from the experience of performing over the last many years, is really that, you know, especially if you have the right chemistries of musicians around you, something's going to work. It's going to just work. You know, you have to kind of have faith and trust in that, because something will work. And I wasn't so sure of that in '87. I didn't know what was going to happen. But now I knew something interesting would happen, especially having those musicians I just told you about, all on one stage at one time. I knew something cool was going to happen.
Hopefully, by being able to give it some recognition, people will actually discover what they failed to discover 25 years ago, and it will receive the recognition I believe it's due.
Thank you all for being here. It's amazing. What an amazing night for us to make this music for you. We're thrilled, and thank you so much. See you next time. When the rain has everyone's out to play. Well, I'm a face in the window, passing through another day. I've heard the cool, cool music of Mingus and Miles in the afternoon. I found the cool blue halo, forgotten by an angel in my room, but I belong to me. Of course I love you, but my life is mine to be. What I want to, and when the train has stopped and everyone is homeward bound, well, I'm the boy in the window, passing through another town. I've heard the cruel, cruel voices of men saying nothing